My guest at this time is Mathew Staver. He is the founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel, and he joins us today to offer his reaction to the breaking news that Attorney General Jeff Sessions has resigned at the recommendation of President Trump. This probably comes as not a huge surprise. The two have had a tough relationship for a long time. The president has at times spoken publicly about his frustrations with Jeff Sessions, mostly due to the fact that he's recused himself from the Russia investigation. But Matt, as you look at the totality of Jeff Sessions' nearly 2 years as Attorney General, what's your evaluation?
Well, look, Jeff Sessions is a good man. He's an honorable person, and he's done very well on religious freedom. However, anybody who serves under the president needs to have the president's blessing, and President Trump, for good reason, got concerned with Jeff Sessions, even though he was loyal during the campaign and he's been faithful during his term. However, if you go back to this whole Russia investigation, it was Jeff Sessions who actually pushed the first domino by recusing himself. He didn't need to recuse himself. He was overly cautious in recusing himself. There was absolutely no reason for him to do so. I think he underestimated his adversaries and what they would do. And as a result of his recusal, which, again, should never have happened, Rod Rosenstein, I think out of vengeance, ultimately appointed Mueller to do this so-called Russia investigation. It's been a waste of taxpayer dollars. It has ruined some people's lives who had nothing to do with the reason for the appointment of the special counsel, and it has shown that President Trump has had nothing to do with the so-called Russia collusion. So I think that is the beginning of the breakdown of Jeff Sessions and President Donald Trump, and for good reason. Moreover, beyond that, Jeff Sessions, although he was good in many areas, he was weak on a couple of things. He wasn't aggressive in bringing prosecutions, as he should have done and should do, and he was not aggressive or did not have the stomach to root out the deep state in both the DOJ and the FBI, which he should do. So I'm looking forward, to be honest, for another Attorney General who will be respectful of the rule of law, but also who is committed to getting to the bottom of some of these Hillary Clinton email server situations, the whole Hillary campaign team and those associated with it in the DOJ and the FBI that really were part of the Russia collusion, the uranium one and so many other things, and also some of the situations that need to be prosecuted from the Kavanaugh case. Several individuals have been referred to the Department of Justice for consideration in pursuing criminal investigations, and I think that needs to happen under the new Attorney General. I think there needs to be some aggressive enforcement of the law, and that's, I think, the kind of person you need to have. The good news is that there's more Republican seats in the Senate that will make a confirmation of the choice of President Trump easier, and certainly much more easier to confirm judges.
Let's talk about a couple other things, one of which you mentioned in passing, and that you think he's been a strong Attorney General when it comes to religious freedom. Expand on that. What are some of the major things he's dealt with?
Well, you look at President Trump. Actually, this came from President Trump. He issued an executive order directing all of the agencies, beginning with the Department of Justice, to ultimately implement religious liberties and guidance on religious liberty. So following that executive order, Jeff Sessions issued his own guidance on religious liberty and began to implement that within the DOJ and required that to be implemented in the other various agencies. But again, that was under the lead of President Donald Trump. So he did what he was ultimately required to do. And I think he ultimately stopped some of the terrible litigation with regards to Obamacare that was begun under President Obama, so that was good as well. I think he's a good man. I think he needed a little bit more tenacity in general to pursue some of these problems, like the deep state in his own Department of Justice, which has never really been rooted out yet. And I think more than that, he needed to never recuse himself. This whole Russia investigation issue really began when he recused himself, and he went way beyond what he should have done. He didn't have to. There was no reason to recuse himself from that investigation.
The argument you'll get is that he some would say misled, perhaps misspoke before the confirmation process for the Senate Judiciary Committee when he was up for the job of Attorney General about the meetings he had with the Russian ambassador. He says they were all in connection with his role as a senator, not his role at the campaign, and that's why ultimately, to avoid any problems because of that testimony, is why he recused himself. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, and that's not a reason to recuse yourself. I understand you want to be overly extra cautious and just recuse yourself from that investigation, and that's fine if you just have the House and the Senate do that with its normal process. But what happened is he underestimated his adversaries. He underestimated the number 2 guy, Rod Rosenstein. He underestimated what would happen, and as a result, the number 2 person becomes the number 1 person, and he's the last person. I mean, look at who ought to recuse himself. It's Rod Rosenstein. He was directly involved in the FISA warrants. He's the one. That's where you ought to have a recusal, not Jeff Sessions. And I think Jeff Sessions did a bad move when he did his recusal.
What do you know about Matthew Whitaker? We'll obviously get a new nominee, I would assume, from President Trump to replace Sessions ultimately. But right now, the acting Attorney General will be Matt Whitaker, served in the Justice Department during the Bush administration, has also served as a U.S. attorney. I
don't know a lot about Matt Whitaker, but I don't think it's going to be somebody from inside that gets put from number 2 to number 1 or somebody who's inside like that. I think it's going to be someone else. I don't know who that might be. I'm sure he'll do a good job in the interim, but I don't see him on the horizon as somebody that Donald Trump will nominate. I may be wrong. I have no idea or no insight into who he is thinking about. I'm sure he's thought about this quite a bit. I do hope that it's not Pam Bondi, the former, the current Attorney General who's going out from Florida. I know she's been very strong supporter of President Trump, but she's very weak. She's been weak in Florida, weak on critical issues. She hasn't been aggressive. If she were the nominee, and I have no indication that she would be, I would not be in favor of that. I'm sure Donald Trump is going to be listening to consultation, and I think he'll make a good choice.
Matt, I'm sure we'll have a nominee here before too long, and as you mentioned, having a larger Senate majority by Republicans should be an asset for President Trump as well as he contemplates this replacement. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Mathew Staver is the founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel. I'm Greg Corombos reporting for Radio America.